Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to episode 10. The Heavy Metal Dude abides as we continue to count down to the top 100 top heavy metal and hard rock songs of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine. In this episode, the big question: is it time to turn in my metal card? Because in this episode, I'm giving Slayer the boot off this list, and I'm replacing him with one of the greatest bands in the history of heavy metal. Who? You gotta tune in to find out. Next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to episode 10 of The Heavy Metal Dude Abides. We are in the top 30 all-time heavy metal hard rock songs. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll notice that in the first 60 or so picks, we didn't really agree with the Rolling Stone on much. And then lo and behold, last week, we accepted 9 out of the 10 artists. Well, we're going to have a repeat performance as me and the Rolling Stone list are starting to kind of converge together. We're going to keep 9 out of the 10 artists, and the one band that we already have declared has to go is Slayer. So the only question now is, who will I pick to replace them? Now, if you understand the rules of how we're going through the Rolling Stone list, you'll know that what happens is I can, if I remove a band, I have to replace that band. And so I have a band in mind that's going to take Slayer's place, and it's a band that's a little bit controversial. So we'll see how this goes. Now, no peeking ahead, but I do want to add, we haven't mentioned this in a while, but because of copyright laws and the things YouTube will not allow us to do, we can't show the music or play the music here on this channel. But what I've done is, if you look down below in the description, I have both a YouTube playlist and a Spotify playlist. Again, don't look until we get there, but in there you will see who's replacing Slayer. Let's see what happens. In the meantime, before we get to the list, go ahead and subscribe. And if you like the band that I replaced Slayer with, give this a like. Give it a big thumbs up. We'll see what people think. Anyway, let's get to it. On to the list we go. All right, coming in at number 30 on the Rolling Stones top 100 heavy metal songs of all time, Metallica with Enter Sandman. Now, of course, this is the first single that they released off the ginormously successful Black Album. I remember when this album broke, this song, very popular, very famous, probably one of the top 2 songs in the Metallica catalog that's pretty much recognized by anyone. And as good as the Black Album was, and as good as this song was, I am going to replace it. And I'm going to go to the 1986, you see it right behind me, Master of Puppets album. Now, Master of Puppets, of course, is the last album with original bassist Cliff Burton. It is a testament to how great Metallica is. We could debate all night, what is the greatest Metallica album? Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets? Both are just 2 of the most epic thrash metal albums in history. Really peak Metallica right here, folks. Now, the song I'm going to pick today off this album is called Welcome Home, Sanitarium. This is a song about mental health institutes, insane asylums, if you will, inspired by the book and following the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. If you've never seen that movie, it is an older movie, but it is sensational. One of the movies, I think, right there, along with The Shining, that made Jack Nicholson a huge star. this might be my favorite Metallica song. It is so great. The line that I love so much in this song, kill is such a friendly word, seems the only way of reaching out again, and then launching into one of the great solos of Kirk Hammett. I love this song. I love this album. It had to be on the list. Coming in at number 30 for the third time, Metallica, Welcome Home, Sanitarium. All right, coming in at number 29 on the list is Pantera with Walk. Now this is where I'm going to get a little crosswise with the Rolling Stone list. Thank goodness they put Pantera on this list. Pantera, one of the greatest heavy metal bands of all time. My problem is that they only put them on here once, and they have multiple songs that have to be on any reputable, responsible top 100 list. There's at least 2 songs that I like better than Walk that have to be on this list, but I have to do the old Sophie's Choice and only select one. So the 2 candidates are, from the 1992 vulgar display of power, the fantastic This Love. This is such an incredible song. It starts out kind of slow. You think, oh, this is going to be a little bit of a ballad. And then boom, the chorus comes in. It's just like being punched in the face over and over again. It will literally, there's headbanging songs, and then there's songs where you just want to put your fist through glass kind of songs. That's this song. I was very fortunate enough, I've talked about this in previous episodes, to see this band live up in Red Rocks Amphitheater. When this song came on, it was one of the greatest mosh pit events of my life. Changed my life. So, man, this song has to be on the top 100 list. But the other candidate is from 1990's Cowboys from Hell album, the incredible Cemetery Gates. Cemetery Gates, we've talked about this on previous episodes again. This is how you do a heavy metal ballad. It's dark, it's emotional. It has to do with, losing someone very close to you and being left, the one being left behind. Again, same as This Love. So much emotion. You really feel the pain coming through the lyrics. You really feel the emotion coming through the lyrics. Again, one of the greatest songs of all time, has to be on the list, and has to be amongst the greatest ballads in the history of heavy metal. Damn you, Rolling Stone. But in the end, I'm picking at number 29, Cemetery Gates, edging out This Love by this much. All right, coming in at number 28, Megadeth, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due. Now, even though it seems as though we've hit our stride with this Rolling Stone list and we're keeping a lot of the artists on the list, it's still a bit of a rarity to keep the artist and the song. But this will be the exception to the rule, because we are absolutely keeping this, both the artist and this song. Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, off the 1990 Rust in Peace album. An album, again, this is two songs on this list today that are represented by albums in my background. Rust in Peace, of course, the Grammy-nominated album, one of the best albums in Megadeth's history. Anyway, Holy Wars is a fantastic song. Here it sits at number 28, but let's be honest, this could be much, much lower. This may indeed be my favorite Megadeth song. It is absolutely, I believe, my favorite Dave Mustaine solo in the band's illustrious history. And it also marks the first appearance of Marty Friedman, who also is one of the best guitarists to ever don the Megadeth gear. He has kind of this really Middle Eastern guitar riff in the middle of this that really, is also fantastic guitar work. So between Dave's solo and Marty's work, this is just a wonderful album if you like great guitar work. Again, coming in at number 28, Megadeth, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due. All right, we're on a roll here. Coming in at number 27, one of my all-time favorite bands, Judas Priest, with the song Living After Midnight. Now, we're going to take Living After Midnight out, and we're going to replace it with a fantastic song from 1984, Defenders of the Faith album, The Sentinel. Now, The Sentinel is a deeper track. It's not one of the hit songs. In fact, it's kind of funny. I was pondering the other day. I just happened to go see Judas Priest on their 50th anniversary tour. They came through Colorado a couple times. I was lucky enough to see them both times. But I was kind of scratching my head a little bit as they were in a much smaller venue than Iron Maiden, who came through in a similar time frame, playing one of our bigger arenas. I thought to myself, why is Judas Priest not as popular as Iron Maiden? Both were equally popular in the 80s. They seem to be, two of the twin towers of heavy metal music in the 80s. So why has Iron Maiden had more staying power, perhaps, and playing bigger venues now when they were kind of on equal footing with Judas Priest then? And it occurred to me, if there's one problem with Judas Priest, it's that they don't have a very good idea on how to market themselves. I blame them and the record label for consistently going and producing great albums and then going out and promoting those albums with some of the weaker songs on the album. In the list, Rolling Stone picks Living After Midnight. This is a prime example of what I'm talking about, as there's at least 3 or 4 better songs on that album than Living After Midnight, yet that was the lead single that they released. Equally perplexing, on the Defenders of the Faith, Judas Priest put out not 1, not 2, but 3 singles, none of them their best song, which is The Sentinel. It's a missed opportunity. And so I think one of the things Iron Maiden was really good at, as when we start to see Iron Maiden on the list very shortly, you're going to see that their best songs are also the songs that they promoted and that they released, and they got them out there so that people, when you say, hey, give me a couple of hits from Iron Maiden, they actually will pull in their bigger songs. Whereas Judas Priest, in many of the situations, many of the albums, it's on the deeper tracks where you find the really good stuff that made Judas Priest such a powerhouse in the 80s. The Sentinel, I'm not going to nitpick too much. I mean, it's sitting here, I'm putting it here at 27, but it could easily be in the top 10. It could easily be in the top 20. This is one of the top 2 Judas Priest songs, in my humble opinion, and yet they had 3 singles that they released off this album, and the Sentinel wasn't on it. The Sentinel is also tailor-made for a music video. One of the other albums that I think about all the time is an album that they released a couple of years later, Ram It Down. They released the single Johnny Be Good, which was basically promoting a very bad Anthony Michael Hall story about football, instead of putting Under Blood Red Skies, which again, at the time with the Terminator, was perfect for the type of video that would have been really popular with this band. The Sentinel would have been a fantastic video. Not sure why, but I think it explains why Judas Priest has always lagged a little bit behind Iron Maiden. Musically, they're right there. Marketing-wise, they never did quite figure out their American audience. But I'm going to do what they should have done and promote one of their greatest songs of all time, coming in at number 27, The Sentinel. Right, coming in at number 26, we have Diamond Head, Am I Evil? And for the second time on this list, we're going to keep the artist and the song. This is a song that has to be on the list. It is iconic. It is fantastic. And it brings us back to the epic early 80s and the new wave of British heavy metal. This song's so good, it was released 3 times in 4 years. Strange, you ask? Well, here's the story. So Diamond Head comes out, and they put an album in 1980 called Lightning to the Nations. Didn't do that well. Kind of an underground band at this point. So they kind of repackaged themselves, spruced themselves up, might have even changed record labels at this point. And they produced an album in 1982 called Borrowed Time. And since the first time around, a lot of people had not heard Am I Evil, they put it on this album as well. Now, for whatever reason, Diamond Head never really made it and kind of fizzled out shortly thereafter. So, in 1983, who comes along but Metallica and puts it as a bonus track on the Kill 'Em All album. So, again, Am I Evil, released in 1980, released in 1982, and released in 1983. The song's so good, it was released 3 times. I love this song. I love the Metallica version. I love the Diamond Head version. Again, Diamond Head's one of those mysterious bands out of the new wave of British heavy metal that just didn't make it. And again, I just look back to there was just so much music coming out. It was easy to get lost in the shuffle. Unfortunately for Diamond Head, they did. But that song was so good that the great Metallica was like, we'll take that song and we'll put a public spotlight on it. And probably my favorite Metallica cover of all time. So, again, coming in at number 26, from the new wave of British heavy metal, Diamond Head, Am I Evil? Yes, I am. All right, we're really cooking now. We're in the top 25 heavy metal songs of all time. Coming in at number 25, the great Ronnie James Dio from the 1983 Holy Diver album, Rainbow in the Dark. Now, for those of you who were around last episode, you'll probably know already that I consider Ronnie James Dio and Rob Halford the 2 greatest vocalists in the history of heavy metal. Probably Dio edges Halford out just a bit, but it depends on the mood and the day, and they're so neck and neck. But anyway, Ronnie James Dio with a tremendously storied career. For those of you who may or may not know, was the lead singer for Rainbow. They put out 3 fantastic albums in the 70s, followed by then a stint with the great Black Sabbath. If you were around, again, last episode, you know that I'm very fond of the Dio Sabbath years. Put out a pair of albums there. And then, for the first time ever, finds himself as a solo artist. Although, technically, it is the band Dio. And he puts out another of the most classic heavy metal albums of all time. Again, 1983's Holy Diver. Now, the funny thing about Rainbow in the Dark is I would actually make this the best song on the album. And it's one of those funny stories where this song almost got left off the album. They were recording the album, and Rainbow in the Dark came in, and Ronnie James Dio said, you know what, I don't think this really fits the album, and was ready to ditch it off the album. It's only after the rest of the bandmates, bassist Jimmy Bain, guitarist Vivian Campbell, and drummer Vinny Appice came to him and said, you can't take this song off, it's fantastic. Dio was, of course, like, I don't know, it's maybe too commercial. They're like, no, this is perfect. And it ends up being a huge hit for them. And again, I think it's their best song on the album, to tell you the truth. when there's lightning, it always brings me down. Great, great. Not just is this a great heavy metal song, but if you listen to the lyrics, fantastic lyrics. Again, this is one of those perfect albums. You could pick anything off this album, and I wouldn't probably argue with you too much. But this is my favorite. Coming in at number 25, Dio, Rainbow in the Dark. In one of the great movies of the 90s, Jurassic Park, came the famous line, "Hold on to your butts." Well, coming in at number 24 on the Rolling Stones Top 100 Heavy Metal Songs of All Time, Slayer, South of Heaven. Well, as we've been teasing for, probably 6 episodes now, I'm going to make a controversial move here. I understand that Slayer is one of the big 4 thrash bands of all time. They're loved by many, and quite frankly, they're kind of that measuring stick for if you're a true metal fan. So I guess I have to turn in my metal card now, because I've never quite understood the appeal of Slayer. I know that's shocking. I know they're immensely popular. I just like my metal to be a little more melodic, to have a better rhythm, and if we're being quite honest, I don't really care for the vocalist of Slayer. So sorry everybody, but Slayer is not going to make the list. I will sit here and recognize their contributions. They're one of the biggest bands that have ever strung a guitar, but they're not going to make my list. But now the dilemma comes, because now I've got a top 25 song. As you can see, slots in this list are few and far between now. So here we are. I've got a top 25 slot, and if you look ahead on the list, Slayer's going to be on here a couple more times. So I need to find a band that can not only come in and be a top 20 type of band, but to have at least 3 songs that are worthy of that top 20 range. Not an easy thing to do. But I have a band in mind that I think can fit the bill. But they themselves are controversial, and I'm not entirely sure why. From the minute I heard them, I thought they were fantastic, and they've had huge sales. They seem to be pretty popular, but at the same point, just something I sense in the metal community that they're not quite what everybody's looking for from time to time. But anyway, enough stalling. My choice at number 24, Five Finger Death Punch. Dot Your Eyes. Now, this comes off the 2013 Wrong Side of Heaven Volume 1 album. Now, the reason I picked this song is because this is the exact opposite of what I get from a Slayer song. This song will have you banging your head, shaking your rump, doing all the things, shaking your fist in the air. This song moves. It's got energy. It's got attitude. I guess it would be back to, groove metal. Great vocals. I love Five Finger Death Punch. Now, I will say this, and again, back in particularly the 90s and the aughts, sometimes you hear a band on the radio or, on the satellite, and they don't always produce their best songs. We talked about this a little bit with Judas Priest. Some of the songs I've heard being heavily promoted are not the best Five Finger Death Punch songs. So sometimes you got to dig a little bit into their albums, but I would say without hesitation that on most of the Five Finger Death Punch albums that I have, there's at least 4 or 5 bangers. And this is one of those just absolutely road trip songs where you need to bring the energy. This one will bring the energy. And so, again, out with Slayer, in with Five Finger Death Punch. coming in at number 24 with Dot Your Eyes, Cross Your T's. All right, if half the audience hasn't stormed off in a huff, let's get to number 23, where the Rolling Stones select Mötley Crüe, Shout at the Devil. Mötley Crüe, arguably one of the biggest commercial successes in the history of heavy metal. And if you take Van Halen out of the picture, which I do, this is kind of the beginning of the big hair movement that runs through the 80s and early 90s. This is that big California sound. This was really started with Mötley Crüe. They were the biggest and the baddest of the bunch. And they had an album that is arguably one of the best ever in Shout at the Devil. Rolling Stones goes off of that album, and again, I don't have any complaints whatsoever. Great album, and again, one of those perfect albums that you can pick 3 or 4 songs of that album, and if you put it in here, I'd go, yeah, I can see that. But, as you know, I'm a little bit of a contrarian, and I'm not going to pick anything off that great album. I'm going to go one album before that, to the 1981 Too Fast for Love album, and the great song Live Wire. So, Mötley Crüe, at least on their first 2 albums, has so much energy, but so heavy. But the second album is a little smoothed out. It is a little bit better produced. Their first album is a little more raw. And Live Wire is that great song that just, as many good songs as Mötley Crüe has over the years, this one kind of stands, to me, apart in that not only is it one of their best songs, but then it also is just so raw, and you can just really feel the power in this band, because again, the production doesn't kind of smooth it out. It's all or nothing. This song just jumps out at you. I love it. It really was the start for Mötley Crüe, and of course they become the biggest band in the world for about a decade. After Shout at the Devil, they really went heavy in a more commercial direction, and I kind of didn't quite enjoy them as much. But these first 2 Mötley Crüe albums are fantastic albums. If you kind of caught Mötley Crüe later in their careers, with like Girls, 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 or even Dr. Feelgood, go back to the basics, go back to the originals. Shout at the Devil, a great, well-produced album, and Too Fast for Love. Same kind of vibe, only a lot more raw. Love them both. And at number 23, we're going with Mötley Crüe, Live Wire. All right, coming in at number 22, another member of the Big Four comes into play. That's right. In this list, in these 10 songs, we have Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer, all 4 of the Big Four represented here. Which just goes to show you just how hugely successful the mid-80s thrash movement was to get this kind of a representation on the list. And if you go back all the way to, I think, episode 1, we also had an Anthrax album back there. So this is their second appearance on the list. Now, in a somewhat controversial move, I think, back in episode 1, we accepted Anthrax, but we changed the song to one of the songs from the John Bush era. For those of you who go back to episode 1, and you'll know I love the album Sound of White Noise. But here, we're going to go with the more classical Anthrax lineup. We're going to go with the Joey Belladonna lineup from the 1987 Among the Living album, and the song Indians. Now, I just realized I failed to give you what the Rolling Stone picks. The Rolling Stone picked a song from that very same album called Caught in a Mosh. And again, this is where there's just a little bit nitpicky here, as both songs are fantastic. This is, to me, the best 80s Anthrax album. So why pick Indians over Caught in a Mosh? Simple reason. Because in the song Indians, right in the middle of the song, I get to yell at the top of my lungs, War Dance. Coming in at number 22, Anthrax, Indians. All right, rounding out the list, we have yet another heavy hitter coming in. These last 10 selections have really been some of the best artists and songs of all time. We just got through talking about the big four. We talked about the inventors of the modern metal movement in Judas Priest, and now the kings of the new wave of British heavy metal appear. Coming in at number 21, Iron Maiden with The Trooper off the 1983 Peace of Mind album. This song, of course, has a very memorable intro. It has a very memorable opening vocal track from Bruce Dickinson. It's instantly recognizable and is one of the biggest hits in the history of Iron Maiden. We talk a lot about this, but if you were to say, what's a song that if I was trying to get someone into metal that I could use as an example, this is it. This is so heavy, so catchy. It's like the perfect, and I think that's why Iron Maiden has really, we talked about this, and the flip side of this with Judas Priest, Iron Maiden really knew what they had and really marketed some of these great songs and made videos with these great songs. The Trooper is one of those songs that you hear it and it becomes one of your all-time favorites. Also, this is 1983, the Peace of Mind album. This is the first time we have seen the classic Iron Maiden lineup together. If you think about it, they were kind of trickling in as we went through the first three albums. We have the original lineup, of course, from the Iron Maiden album, and then as we move into the Killers album, guitarist Dennis Stratton, he's out. Adrian Smith comes in. That's followed up by Number of the Beast, and of course, lead singer Paul Di'Anno is fired, and Bruce Dickinson comes in. While we're on the subject, Paul Di'Anno, pretty poor health right now, but I understand he's, doing some touring and really trying to overcome. We wish you the best, Paul. Even though you were only in Iron Maiden for a couple of albums, you're still part of the heavy metal family. We all love you to death. And then finally, after Number of the Beast on this album, of course, this is the album where Nico McBrain comes in, replacing the legendary drummer Clive Burr, one of my all-time favorite drummers. Clive, unfortunately, did pass away a number of years ago. Rest in peace, brother. Just one of the greatest power drummers of all time. I'm not a drummer by nature, but I really like the big power drummers, and Clive Burr puts on such a clinic drumming on those first three albums. Highly recommended if you have never gone back that far in the Maiden catalog. Anyway, this is the classic lineup that's then together for Peace of Mind, for the mega hit Power Slave, Somewhere in Time. The list goes on and on. And when Iron Maiden reunited and is still together today, this is that classical lineup. All of these members still hanging in there and part of the Iron Maiden that we know and love. So, again, coming in at number 21, rounding out the list, and what a list it is, Iron Maiden with The Trooper. And that's the list. I can't believe next week we'll be in the top 20 top heavy metal songs of all time. Hard to believe that there's better songs than what we had this week. I love the 10 songs we reviewed this week. All of them such great songs representing some of the biggest bands in the history of heavy metal. Fantastic stuff. Now, opening up the mailbag, we had a listener come in and ask a question. Will I be doing an honorable mentions list? Some of the songs that just missed out on the list. Well, if the public demands it, of course. So next week we'll be doing the top 20, but between then and the top 10, we'll be doing a special episode where we talk about honorable mentions, some of the songs that just couldn't quite fit in the list, but are great nonetheless. I think you'll really enjoy it. And also, a little homework assignment for you, my loyal viewers. So one of the things I'd like for you to do is go through we've done 10 episodes of the show. 8 have been specifically targeting songs on this list. Go back through those lists and hey, go ahead and rank. Did I do better or did the Rolling Stone do better? Because at the end of the day, it's been great sharing all this music with you. But at the end of the day, I really don't know what you guys, I mean, obviously you're coming back and watching the content, but I want to know, hey, where did the list go great for you? Where did maybe the Rolling Stone do better than I am? I'm sure there's a few songs I've thrown off the list that people are like, hey, maybe if you're a big Slayer fan, for instance. But anyway, go into the videos and give me a thumbs up if I did better than the Rolling Stone. And if I didn't do better than the Rolling Stone, go into the comments and tell me where I messed it up, where Rolling Stone is superior. When we do our honorable mention list in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go through all your comments and pull out the most common themes, and we'll have kind of a little bit of a People's Choice Awards going on that episode. So if you have a song that you're like, dude, you completely missed one of the greatest songs of all time, put it in the comments of one of those videos, and we'll be compiling that list and sharing them out across the interwebs. So you have 2 weeks to complete this assignment. Do it. Anyway, as always, great to be with you all. This is the Metal Dude signing off. Remember, next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, we'll be going through the top 20 heavy metal songs of all time. I can't wait. But until then, this is the Metal Dude signing off. Take care.